Chapter 18 The Sea. Her gaze fell on Keenan and she stormed over, eyes locked on him. "Well?" she demanded, fire burning in her stare. I chuckled, leaning back, curious to see how this would play out. Lily leaned in and whispered, "I don't know what he did, but I like her." I smiled at Lily as the woman's glare flicked briefly to us before snapping back to Keenan. Keenan, clearly confused, hesitated. "What do you mean?" "Oh, you know exactly what I mean," she shot back, slamming her fists on the table. Her stare looked hot enough to set him ablaze. Keenan turned to me with a helpless shrug. "I really don't." Then it hit me. "Wait," I said aloud. "You were the girl on the boat." Her eyes flashed as she turned her glare on me. "Do I look like a girl to you?" "Woman, sorry," I corrected quickly. She snorted and turned back to Keenan. Keenan spoke carefully. "Well, we saved your life." She nodded. "And we brought you to the healers," he added. "And," she pressed, arms crossed, voice sharp. Keenan threw up his hands, glancing at me in bewilderment. "You paid for my healing," she continued, "and told them you'd cover any future costs." Keenan shrugged. "I was just trying to help." "Oh, really?" she scoffed. "Well, where I come from, there are only 3 reasons someone would pay for everything. Their family, they're claiming an indentured servant, or," she paused, fixing him with a sharp look, "they're declaring an intention to marry." I turned to Keenan, who looked like he was about to combust from sheer embarrassment. "That's not what I mean, I was just," he stammered, flustered. "I don't want you seem nice, but—" I glanced at Lily, who was struggling to keep a straight face. I couldn't hold it in anymore and burst out laughing. She quickly joined me. Even my uncle started to smile. When the laughter finally died down, the woman had relaxed a little, a small smile cracking through her irritation. "So you're not trying to marry me, then?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Or make me your servant?" "No," Keenan said quickly. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize that's how things worked in your culture. I was only trying to help." She huffed. "Well, good, because I plan to return to my island and see if anyone survived. I can't be indebted to a stranger." Keenan offered a reassuring smile. "It was a gift. As a paladin, it's my duty to help those in need." She crossed her arms. "Humph. Well, I'll find a way to pay you back." I leaned toward Keenan and whispered, "If she finds survivors or anyone who can help, she could bring them here, help defend the town." He nodded and turned back to her. "Once you know what's left of your people, you're welcome to return if you're willing to fight alongside us." She laughed. "That's the first thing you've said that makes sense. But first, my people." I glanced at Lily, who was grinning. She caught my eye and said, "Yep, I like her." I just shook my head. She sighed. "Well, now that that's taken care of, which way is the dock?" she asked with a smile. "I need to find a ship to take me north." I smiled back. "We were just finishing up. We can take you there." With that, we all stood and made our way outside, heading down to the docks. When we arrived, Gam spoke up. "We don't have many ships running north, especially with winter setting in soon." "Yes, I was hoping you might know someone who could take me," she replied. As we discussed it, our eyes fell on the gleaming white sails of the ships we had saved and cleansed. A thought struck me. "Wait, could she take you?" I asked, pointing towards the ship. Throm shrugged. "It's possible. We'd have to ask her." We approached, and a man standing on the deck leaned over the railing with a smile. "Ahoy! How can the lady in white help you?" Keenan frowned. "The lady in white?" The man nodded. "That's what she's decided to call herself, or rather, what the ship will be named." Gam, curious, asked, "And who are you?" The man hesitated, glancing down thoughtfully before responding. "I am what remains, but I am new. I help make the ship appear more—" He paused, then continued, "human." At that moment, the glowing female spirit of the ship appeared beside him. "They are an extension of me," she explained. "They create the illusion that this is, in fact, a real ship, and not just a possessed vessel with no crew." Throm chuckled. "That's clever." Grog huffed. "Why am I even here?" he muttered, turning and heading back towards the inn. I chuckled, then turned back to the spirit. "We have a favor to ask." She nodded, listening quietly. "Can you take this woman back to her island to see if there are any survivors?" The spirit's expression softened. "Of course. You saved me, and I want to help this world in any way I can, so that what happened to mine won't happen here." I nodded. "Thank you." She smiled at me. "I see that you've begun to understand why you are different. That is good. Evil will be drawn to your energy, and knowing who you truly are will help you." Then she turned to the red-haired woman. "What is your name?" The woman straightened slightly. "My name is Ersa." She gave a small bow of her head, and I suddenly realized none of us had asked her name before. I shook my head at the oversight. The lady in white nodded. Please, come aboard. We are ready to depart whenever you are. Yrsa turned back to us, a determined glint in her eyes. I will return, if it is meant to be, and help you drive these wretched creatures off of this world and back to whatever disgusting cave they crawled out of. She reached out, shaking our hands one by one, then boarded the ship. With almost effortless grace, the vessel slipped from the harbor. Yrsa waved goodbye, and we waved back, turning towards the city as the white sails vanished beyond the breakwater. Just as we were about to leave the docks, Throm stopped and looked at Keenan. We all paused, waiting. Have you heard from the school? He asked. Keenan smacked his forehead. No, he groaned. I hadn't even thought about it. We need to warn them, Throm said, his voice low and urgent. Okay, Keenan replied. I guess we should talk to the fishermen. Agreed, Throm nodded. We made our way to the far end of the docks, where the fishermen moored their boats. A small building stood nearby, cluttered with nets, hooks, and the briny scent of seawater. Inside, an old man sat behind a desk, absently threading a lure with a hook that looked older than the desk itself. Good morning, Mackie, Throm greeted. Without looking up, the old man replied, Throm, good to see you. What brings you to our side of the tide? We need to charter passage, Throm said. Mackie finally looked up, eyes sharp despite his age. Why us? There are other boats, he asked, glancing at Keenan, who nodded politely. You know where we need to go, Throm said, and only a few can get us there. A slow smile crept across Mackie's weathered face. Tomorrow at sunrise, be here and we'll take you. Then he returned to his lure, saying no more. Outside, Lily turned to Throm. What was all that about? He smiled. Not everyone can just go to the Isle of Light. She rolled her eyes. I was never good at cloak and dagger stuff, she muttered. I'd rather just punch them in the face. She threw a mock jab in the air. I laughed. Careful, Lil. You might hurt yourself. She shot me a glare. See if I help you the next time you're in trouble. We all laughed. After a few more words, we split up. Keenan went with Throm to settle things with the healers and check his weapons. Gam had a council meeting. Rieger headed to the cave to check on Frank and the frost giants. Lily promised not to start trouble and vanished into the crowd, already exploring. I returned to my uncle's house, wrote letters to each of them, sealed them and placed them on their pillows. Then I sat in silence, reflecting on everything. Keenan's return, the king and his family, the ship and Yrsa, the Order of Light, the demons. I had regained most of my memories, and once again I was helping the dwarves prepare for war. I fell asleep quickly and woke early. Throm and Grog were already up. Gam had left before dawn. We gathered our gear in silence. Where's Lil? I asked. Throm smiled, already down at the dock. She's been pacing since sunrise. I shook my head, laughing. She can't sit still. We made our way down to the harbor, meeting Rieger and Keenan along the way. The horizon glowed with the first light of day, soft gold spilling over the edge of the sea. The sky was a breathtaking blend of orange, rose, and lavender. Wisps of cloud drifted overhead, tinged with fire. The stillness of dawn was broken only by the creak of wood, the rustle of gear, and the distant calls of waking birds. The shimmering reflection of sunrise danced across the water, rippling gently in the breeze. I paused, letting the moment settle. The salty tang of the sea filled the air, mingling with the scent of fish, damp rope, and sun-warmed wood. A briny trace of dying seaweed clung to the breeze, carrying the essence of the harbor. Around me the docks stirred. Seagulls cried overhead. Fishermen mended nets. Metal clanked against wood. Ropes groaned as boats swayed with the tide. Footsteps echoed across the planks. The murmur of waves provided a constant soothing rhythm. Then smack, a sharp thud to the back of my head. No time for daydreaming, doofus. We gotta save the world. Again, Lily's voice teased. I opened my eyes to see her standing with her hands on her hips, giving me that look, the one that always made me smile. All right, you little brat, I said, grinning. Let's go. Together we walked over to where the rest of our party was speaking with the middle-aged fisherman. Throm gestured to the man. This is Ramus. Ramus stood with the quiet confidence of a man who'd weathered a lifetime at sea. His posture was relaxed yet grounded, like someone who'd grown roots in the deck of a ship. His sun-worn skin was tanned and rough, his face etched with deep lines carved by wind and salt. A neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard framed his weathered features. Though his hair was wild and wind-blown, his hands, thick-fingered and calloused, bore the unmistakable marks of decades spent hauling nets and steering vessels through unpredictable waters. He wore faded brown pants crusted with salt and flecked with fish scales, a thick wool sweater, and boots caked with sand and sea spray. His sharp brown eyes scanned the harbor constantly, reading the mood of the sea like a book. When he spoke, his gravelly voice carried quiet authority. He looked over us as we approached. "So 5 of you, then?" "Yes," Throm said, "and we're ready to leave immediately." Ramus gave a curt nod, then gestured subtly towards a larger ship further out in the harbor. "Keep an eye on that one," he said lowly. "They've been known to run with pirates." Without another word, he led us down to the pier to a modest fishing vessel, where a dozen crew members moved in efficient coordination. Final preparations were underway as we stepped aboard, entering the ordered chaos of sailors shouting commands, tightening ropes, and loading gear. Thick mooring lines groaned as they were loosened from their posts. The furled sails rustled as the wind tugged at them impatiently. The deck creaked under steady footsteps, while from below came the rhythmic thump of barrels and crates being secured in the hold. As the tide nudged us free, a final order rang out and the sails were loosed. They snapped open, catching the breeze and propelling us forward. The dock receded behind us, shrinking with every passing second as we glided into open waters. The prow of the vessel sliced cleanly through the waves, sending up white spray on either side. I smiled and glanced at Keenan. I've always loved how a crew moves as one, how they all work with the wind together. Keenan groaned softly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I prefer solid ground," he muttered. "Last time I was on a boat, I got seasick." We kept an eye on the ship Ramus had pointed out, noting how they watched our departure but made no move to follow. Satisfied, we turned our attention back to the journey ahead. For a couple hours the voyage was calm. The ship creaked and swayed as we moved about the deck, asking the sailors questions and watching them work. Eventually the captain summoned us aft. He wore a faint smile as he gestured us closer. "Who here has been to the Isle of Light before, besides the 2 paladins?" Rieger, Lily, and I shook our heads. The captain's grin widened. "Then you're in for a treat." He opened a small wooden box beside the ship's wheel and held up a glowing orange device. It pulsed softly in his hand. Lily leaned in towards me. "Hey, can I have one of those?" I shushed her, too intrigued to answer. The device began emitting a series of energy pulses. Suddenly glowing bubbles formed around the ship, drifting upwards like a paper lanterns in the wind. As we continued forward, the ship abruptly shuddered, like it had struck something solid, though it never slowed. A deep vibration rippled through the hull as we pushed through an invisible barrier. Then, just as suddenly, we burst through. The sensation was like breaking the surface of water into open air. The captain tucked the device back into its box and gave us a knowing smile. "Welcome to the Island of Light." As we looked up, gasping in awe, before us stood a castle perched atop a rugged island, rising like a monument to what we could accomplish when we all worked together instead of fighting. It loomed with commanding presence, its walls crafted from pristine white stone that shimmered in the sunlight. The structure rose majestically, its soaring towers piercing the sky like blades of light. The stone glowed faintly, as though infused with energy drawn from the island itself, alive, vibrant, and ancient. At the heart of the castle, a beacon of radiant light surged into the heavens, an ethereal column cutting through the clouds and stretching endlessly skyward. The light pulsed with a quiet power, a rhythm like a heartbeat, visible for miles, if not for the protective barrier that cloaked this place. To the side, a small weathered pier jutted from the rocky shoreline, its wooden planks worn smooth by time and the sea. The distant roar of waves crashing against the cliffs echoed through the air. "Well, that's a pretty sight," Rieger said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Agreed," I replied, unable to take my eyes off the castle. Lily gave a short snort. "You know this place has to have secret passages," she said, eyes narrowing with excitement, "and I'm going to find them." Throm only shook his head, getting used to her by now, while Keenan grinned. "Lily, I'm glad I didn't meet you until after my paladin training. You'd have gotten me into so much trouble." Lily smiled mischievously. I laughed, already picturing the chaos they would have caused together. Ramus steered the ship gently up to the dock, then turned to Throm. "Should we return tonight or in the morning?" Throm considered it. "Better tonight. Too many eyes watching around the harbor. We don't want to draw attention." Ramus nodded. "We'll fish offshore for a while, then tie up and wait. Try to be back a few hours before dusk if you can." With that, we disembarked as the crew moved out a little way and cast their nets into the water. We turned to face the winding path that led from the pier up to the towering castle. My heart stirred as I took it all in. I had always dreamed of seeing the Isle of Light, and now I stood on the island looking up at its gates. Throm took the lead, followed by Keenan and Lily, with Rieger and me trailing behind. The climb was long, and the stone steps carved in the island's slope, winding higher and higher until we reached the massive castle doors. Throm stepped forward and called out, his voice firm. "Gatekeeper, I am Throm, here with Keenan and companions. We bring news for the master and the teachers, news that cannot wait." A moment passed. Then with a deep, echoing groan, the massive doors began to creak open.